Most of us have thought this at one point or another, and today I'm going to explore why. Hi, I'm Kirsten, and I am one half of the Christian jazz pop duo Zoetic. This YouTube channel is made up of two types of videos: our original music videos, where we create Christian culture, and long-form videos like this one, where we critique Christian culture. We post these long-form Christian culture videos every other Thursday, so be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss anything. You can also find this video as a podcast at the link below. Today, I'm going to talk about why most people think that Christian art is terrible. And by art, I don't just mean like paintings or things like that. I mean music, movies. I mean, I guess it could be paintings. It's usually not the issue, but books, all that type of stuff. I'm going to talk about why there is this impression that Christian art is inferior to secular stuff, that Christian music is inferior to secular music, that Christian movies are inferior, cheesier than secular movies. So I want to talk about why I think people have that impression and some of the deeper reasons for that. So let's get right into it. The first reason is simply just that the message has gotten shallower in Christian art. So if we're looking, for instance, at these lyrics from the hymn, When I Survey the Wondrous Cross, compare these lyrics. It says, "When I survey the wondrous cross on which the Prince of Glory died, my richest gain I count but loss, and pour contempt on all my pride. Forbid it, Lord, that I should boast, save in the death of Christ my God. All the vain things that charm me most, I sacrifice them to his blood." So those are the first two verses of When I Survey the Wondrous Cross, that beautiful hymn. And that's an older hymn. And you can tell that the lyrics are extremely beautiful. They're poetic, they're artful. They're also obvious in message. So this is something that I want to say, is that I think Christian art can be obvious in its message. We shouldn't endeavor to make Christian art less Christian or to say God or Jesus less. I don't think that that is the problem. The problem is the artistic component of it in and of itself. So you compare the beauty and the depth of those lyrics to these lyrics. This was a song by Jesus Culture. I think it came out in the last decade. Set a fire down in my soul that I can't contain, that I can't control. I want more of you, God. I want more of you, God. Set a fire down in my soul that I can't contain, that I can't control, because I want more of you, God. I want more of you, God, so on and so forth, right? And I understand that these are two extreme examples, right? I'm sure that there are hymns, older hymns, that are less artful than When I Survey the Wondrous Cross, and I'm sure that there are contemporary songs, I know there are, that are more artful or more artistic than the one I just read. But the comparison still stands. In general, we see this degradation in worship music where the lyrics just get kind of simpler, less poetic, less artful. And it's like the message has been watered down at the end of the day. The message in When I Survey the Wondrous Cross is beautiful, but it's also a deeper exposition of the gospel. But with Set a Fire Down in My Soul that I can't contain, that I can't control, I don't know what that's telling me about the gospel message. And so I think that is reason number one. Again, that's an anecdotal example. I could give more, but it's that the message itself has been watered down. We have lyrics that are less theological, and I'm talking mostly about music because that's my area of expertise, obviously, but in movies as well. Maybe the concepts of the movies are not quite as intricate as they have been in the past. And movies are a relatively new art form, but lyrical poetry is kind of where I'm comparing this. So that's reason number one. I think that the message over time has been watered down. Reason number two is kind of tandem with that, which is that the message sometimes is a lot more important than artistic technique. So I think we can all agree that in Christian art, the message is very important. I think that the message is the most important. I mean, At the end of the day, artists are called to spread the gospel, just like every other human. If you're a Christian artist, just like every other Christian, your mission is the Great Commission, right? Go into the world, make disciples of all nations. That being said, if you're making art, artistic technique is really, really important, and it's going to make the message much more powerful. I do believe the message is important. Like I said, I don't think we have to make Christian art less Christian. Handel's Messiah is a great work of art and is extremely Christian. The artwork on the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel is very obviously Christian, and it's beautiful. It's not so much that the message is too obvious, it's that the execution of the art is not good enough, that there isn't enough focus on that. I think that often Christian movie producers and music producers think that if the message is obvious, and even if the art is performed well, then that's enough. But I actually think that that most Christian art goes wrong in the songwriting for the music and the script writing for movies. I think the writing is not artful enough in the music, and I don't think the writing is artful enough in the movies. Often the singing in Christian songs is quite good. I mean, they get good singers to perform them. And the acting in Christian movies is okay, but you can only do so much if the song itself is not written artfully, if it's written poorly, and the movie script is written poorly. The songwriting and the script writing is cheesy often. It just isn't executed artfully enough. And it's like, can you quantify that? I can quantify it a lot better with music than I can with movies, but I'm just pointing that out. There are a lot of cheesy tropes that Christian songwriters fall into. Lyrical common rhymes that are just way overused, right? Chord progressions that are uninteresting, melodies that sound childish and not creative. These are just a couple of the ways, like production tropes, like the swelling at the beginning of songs. For movie scripts, which is not my purview, not my area of expertise, but you have a lot of predictability and poor acting. This was the case, unfortunately, with the movie His Only Son, which is made by Angel Studios, which I know is Mormon. But the story is great. The story's great. It's the story of Abraham being told by God to sacrifice his son Isaac on the altar. But the script and the acting were just nearly unwatchable. The message was spot on, but the execution of the art was subpar. So while I agree that the message is extremely important, it's only conveyed powerfully if we do it in a skillful way as artists. And I think that is being lost. Another reason. So this one's a little controversial, but another reason why I think Christian art can be seen as subpar to secular art, and hear me out here, is that Christian art is almost always G or PG. Guys, real life is not rated G or PG. And if all of our Christian art is, non-Christians don't think that we understand the seriousness of life and how hard it can get. I mean, I call K-Love, the popular Christian radio station, out for this all the time. What is their moniker? Their moniker is positive and encouraging. They're telling you the mood that all of their songs are going to be in. Well, the Christian life is not always positive and encouraging. Sometimes it's convicting. Sometimes it's devastating. God is present through that. His redemptive power is through it. But if every single piece of art that we make is kind of positive, encouraging, or even just maybe it tries to tackle serious topics, but it does it in a very tame way all the time, the art is not going to be taken seriously. And Christians aren't going to be taken seriously either. So I want to use an example. The movie Fireproof, is a movie about a man who struggles with pornography addiction and almost ruins his marriage with his wife. That's what the movie is about. It's a Christian movie. And the movie comes across as somewhat inauthentic. I have seen it because it's rated PG. This is an R-rated topic. So approaching the topic of a man who struggles with pornography addiction in a family-friendly way is kind of impossible. You're not going to be able to convey that very well. Can you imagine if a movie like The Shawshank Redemption, which is a prison movie, was rated PG? I mean, it just wouldn't be able to be taken seriously because prison life is not rated PG. When you approach things this way. It just doesn't make the situation seem real. And I don't know how you correct that with that specific movie. I am not saying that you show actual pornography in the movie. Obviously not. That would be gross and sinful. But it's a problem. It's a problem where even if we pick harder topics, it's like Christians feel like they can't explore them to an extent that would be realistic or artful. To be clear, I do think there is a correct way and an incorrect or a sinful way to do this. We should not be sinful when we do this as Christian artists or gratuitous. So I'm going to give some examples. The correct way, the Passion of the Christ. The Passion of the Christ is incredibly gory. It is rated R, as it should be, because it is about the crucifixion. It is the best movie about the crucifixion. I know there have been others that have been made, but they have to be rated PG-13. There's a reason why this is one of the most lauded and powerful Christian films ever made, right? Because they didn't tame something that is untamable. The violence of the crucifixion. Another correct way, I don't mean to be self-aggrandizing, but our song Forfeited Youth, it tackles the subject of transgenderism from the point of view of a teenage girl who is uncomfortable in her own skin. Okay, it is more of an adult subject, right? But we don't curse in the song or make it sexually gratuitous. It's just tackling hard things in a God-honoring but a realistic way. An incorrect way of doing this is King's Kaleidoscope. King's Kaleidoscope did a song called A Prayer, and they said the F word in it. I'm going to read the lyrics. Will I fall or will I misstep? Will I fall or will I misstep? Will I call you with my last breath? Will you be there for me after? Will I waste inside the silence where the fear is effing violent? But he sings the word. And he says it again. And I have always appreciated King's Kaleidoscope for their musical creativity, but I do not think this is the way to correctly portray yourself as a Christian artist. I don't think that we need to be gratuitous in terms of putting in edgy content, but it's more like if the subject calls for it, there's a correct way to represent it. And I think it's really difficult. I think it is difficult to walk that line as a Christian artist where you're tackling different, difficult subjects in a way that still honors God, but realistically portrays the subject. I think that's very difficult. I think it's a challenge that non-Christian artists, like secular artists, don't have to face that. They don't have to worry about that. But we do. We still need to honor God, but it's more of just like, how can we do that while still portraying the rawness and the evil of the world through art? So that's reason number 3. And the final reason is that game-changing art, like incredible art, is a market risk. There's always a market risk. It's easier to just find something that's family friendly because it appeals to the broadest amount of people, and just continually repeat that over and over. It is easier to repeat what works. For example, the God's Not Dead trilogy, which personally, I'm glad, if that movie's impacted people, great. If the trilogy's impacted people, I don't think it's good from a filmmaking perspective. Okay. But it made almost $94 million at the box office. All 3 movies together, that is, not just the first one. And the Christian music industry, I've talked about this before, did this in the 2000s. I still think they kind of do, with Becky. Okay, so Becky was Christian radio's archetypal audience that they wrote most of their songs for. And this excerpt is taken from an article by Matt Papa more than a decade ago. He's since taken it down off his own website, but it's still up in a few places. It's a little bit of a longer excerpt, but I think it's really, really good. This is what he says. Meet Becky. She's a 30-year-old soccer mom with 3 kids. She drives a minivan because if she didn't, well, where would she put all the crayons and the goldfish? She is a loving wife and mother and is actively involved in her church. She lives in the suburbs, but volunteers at the local food pantry. Becky is pretty awesome. And one more important detail about Becky. She listens to Christian radio exclusively. Yep, that's right. And you actually already know her. Becky isn't one person, of course. She is the prototype target audience created by the Christian music industry for Christian radio. True story. She's been around about 6 or 7 years now. Christian radio demographic research discovered that Becky is the one who is listening. So Becky is the audience they relentlessly target. Here's what happens. Christian radio plays songs for Becky. The labels know that in order to sell music, they have to get songs on the radio. Radio equals Becky. So the labels coerce their artists and bands to all write and record songs for Becky. Songs that will make her feel good. Songs that tell her she is good. Songs that are safe for the whole family. Songs that remind her of her snowflakeness and tell her to turn that frown upside down. Songs that focus on love and hope. Songs that aren't confrontational. Songs that aren't theological because, man, that stuff is up in the clouds. Songs that don't talk about blood and crosses and depressing stuff like that. Songs that focus on Becky and her busy life. And if the artists or bands want to write songs for another demographic or another purpose, that's fine. They can just make music somewhere else. There is money to be made. So here we are. Bands and artists who want to be heard write songs for Becky. Christian radio, therefore, is for the most part an altar where chipper, inauthentic, boring, unscriptural, untruthful, gospel absent, ear-tickling, man-centered songs are offered to an idol named Becky. Wolf. Real powerful words there. And this is a little bit of an older article, but this is something that, I believe Christianity Today even wrote an article about it. Here's the problem. If you write for Becky, if you make music for Becky, or movies even, Christian movies for Becky, what about her 45-year-old husband, Brad, or their 17-year-old son, Bobby, or their 13-year-old daughter, Bella? I'm just making up these people, obviously. Don't they deserve to have Christian art made for them as well? They do. Radio and now Spotify playlists, and I can speak to this as a Christian artist, incentivize Christian musicians to write positive, encouraging K-Love songs because they work. They sell from a market perspective. But they don't work. What they don't work for is non-Christians seeking deep truth. They don't work for them, okay? And I am really, really tired of shallow Christianity in our songs and in our movies. At some point, as Christians, we need to transition from milk to meat. Like Paul says in 1 Corinthians 3, verse 2, it is sad that almost all Christians know nothing about church history. It is sad that most of them would not be able to recite the Apostles' Creed or the core tenets of the Christian faith. But if we had Christian art that stressed those things, that offered more, that would be a game changer. And it would give non-Christians something where they were like, oh, maybe there is more to Christianity than I initially thought. And so this is just kind of food for thought, these 4 reasons. And that's going to be it for me today. So please be sure to like and subscribe for more of these videos every other Thursday. Thank you guys so much, and God bless.